On this season of Destination Earth, Akane and I take to Canada's smallest province of Prince Edward Island. PEI is known for many things, including sandy beaches, red cliffs, and being a land full of potatoes. As we explore this amazing province, we'll show you everything from the main city of Charlottetown to the stunning landscapes of Prince Edward Island National Park. Where are we off to today? Let's find out. After spending our first 5 days of our PEI trip in Charlottetown, we were ready to head up north to Prince Edward Island National Park. We were taking our time on this trip. In fact, it was the first time I've ever been able to test out the working remotely part of my new job that I just started in February. With the first few days of success, I was curious to see how it would fare out in a more remote countryside location where finding Wi-Fi wasn't quite as easy. Besides this excitement, we were pleased to be exploring a brand new national park. Now, if you haven't guessed it by this point, national parks are one of mine and Akane's favorite places to visit. They encompass so much of the natural beauty that each country offers, and because of this, we've actually made it a priority to visit as many national parks as possible. Unlike a lot of places we've been to lately, this location has a distinct lack of mountains, but that doesn't mean there's not beauty to be found, and we're going to show you that.
With a quick stop at what appeared to be a new visitor center, we set off looking for the first of 3 trails to occupy our day.
So we're back once again. This time we're in Greenwich, Prince Edward Island, and we're going to be going to this part of the national park. So Prince Edward Island National Park is actually split into 3 individual sections, and we're starting out here in the most eastern part.
There will be a 20-meter sand dune, so we are so excited to see it.
That's right. So this particular trail system is broken down into 3 trails, and before we get to the one with the sand dunes, we're going to hike the 2 shorter ones first. So the first trail that we're going to start with today is the Blue Trail, and it's called Havre St Pierre, and it is something that's going to be touching on the roots of the Acadians here in Prince Edward Island.
As it turned out, all trails within the park began from one central location and branched off at certain points along the way. This allowed us to reach all trails within this section of the park easily, without having to find a place to park each and every time. The Havre St Pierre was a short 1.1 kilometer or 0.6 mile loop. As we walked, we took in the information found across the multiple interpretive panels located along the hike. Established in 1720, when the first French settlers came to Prince Edward Island, Havre St Pierre was one of the largest settlements in the colony of Ile Saint-Jean. On a summer's day in the 1730s, this was a busy place. Here, a fleet of tiny shallops, sails snapping as they set out for the fishing grounds. Over there, along the shore, rows of snowy white codfish set out on dry flakes. Out in the bay, merchantmen nose carefully through the sandbars looking for clams and mussels. The bottom of the bay is like a giant compost bin. Seaweed and shellfish collect here when they die and form thick, black mud. The decomposing shells create high lime content, making mussel mud, a perfect fertilizer for the island's acidic soil. Digging it was once a winter ritual, and the deposits here were some of the richest in the province. Farmers stopped using mussel mud in the 1940s, but the mussels are once again an important part of the economy. Thanks in part to the variety of fishing opportunities, Havre St Pierre was a prosperous community. The future looked bright. That is, until the day the British gained control of the colony and in 1758 deported all of the settlers back to France they could find.
Now, the deportation of the Acadians is something that I actually learned in school, and is a topic that actually stuck with me all this time. Unlike now, I wasn't a huge fan of history in high school. There were too many dates. I really didn't find it was that relatable, and it wasn't all that interesting. The Acadians, they may sound like it was a thing of the past, but that couldn't be more wrong. Throughout the Maritimes, Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Island, New Brunswick, there are pockets of these French-speaking Canadians where the history lives on today. These are an integral part of the Canadian identity, and I'm glad that this place is helping to showcase them and preserving their history.
Once the French were pushed off the island, the early British settlers were more interested in farming than fishing. By the early 1800s, a small village began to grow farther inland. Here, the bay was narrow and easily crossed, first by ferry, later by bridge. St. Peter's became a typical rural crossroad village. It was where you came to sell your surplus and buy supplies, or have your horse shod, or see the doctor, or get a haircut. By the 1940s, the village was home to a dozen assorted shops and stores, 2 community halls, 2 doctors, and a courthouse. There were even several tourist homes and a hotel called the Bayview.
As we were walking down the path, I saw these beautiful yellow flowers, and I'm like, man, I've got to stop and get a picture of them. But you know what they are? These are dandelions. I've never seen dandelions so tall before. Usually they're about this, maybe 2 or 3 inches off the ground. This is by far the biggest I've ever seen them.
As you make your way along the trail, you'll eventually come to an open field with wonderful views of the bay. This is the location of the old Sanderson Farm. It is believed that Charles Sanderson started the farm here around 1820. Until the farm was sold in the early 1970s, different generations of Sandersons cared for this land. Always mindful of the ever-changing sand dunes, they helped shape the landscape. Many of the old fields or woodlots that you see today remain as evidence of their efforts. The old birch trees mark the location of the Sanderson farmstead. The last Sanderson to own this farm was Cyril, a great-grandson of Charles, who took over the farm in 1939 at the age of 14. After the land was sold, the buildings gradually fell into ruin, and the house was torn down in 1997.
We were really pleased after hiking this trail. The trail was full of history and had some really stunning scenery. We're not the type of travelers that constantly need a challenge where we need to be hiking up a huge, tall mountain to get the best views possible. In fact, being out in nature and doing something very simple is part of what we enjoy about going to a new place and reconnecting with nature. With the hike done, we were excited to see about the second trail, Tlactic. We were wondering what this trail was going to offer us, and we hope that you'll come with us as we lead you to the next adventure by joining us in the next video. Until then, God bless.